Hello and welcome to the Daily Jam. My name is Jamal. This is episode number 13. It's the 1st of May 2025. It's a Thursday evening. And today I want to discuss, or tonight, I would like to discuss the nature of learning in general, but in particular, the nature of learning in regards to learning drums. What is learning? What is understanding? What is knowledge? What is it to go from a place of not being able to do a specific thing to then gradually being able to do a specific thing? What's going on with that? And can we do it in a very scientific, neat way, or is reality and life just messy? And is it a perpetual mystery? That's what I want to discuss. I want to do my best to keep it brief. I've got things to do. I've got exams that are not drumming or music related, which is kind of relevant because I'm forever engaged in this process of learning how to learn. So I'm coming up against these things all the time. And what I'm noticing in my studies at university is that learning never happens the way I want it to. I would love learning to happen the exact way that I planned for it to happen in my head, where I've got it all mapped out. And if I do X, Y, and Z, it will result in X, Y, and Z over here, so that by the time exams come up, I will be ready for action. But it never quite works out that way for me. And I've done a little bit of research into the nature of learning itself, what it is to learn. And I think there are great theories and ideas, and more than theories, there are great strategies out there. But I just know my own mind gets chaotic, gets very chaotic. And unfortunately, I'm not like a computer. I'm not a machine in the sense that you can't just give me the download for the new information and then I double click the executable file and then it installs into my mind. It doesn't just work that way for me, unfortunately, because it would make things a lot smoother if it did. But for me, it's a bit more messy, it's a bit more chaotic, it's a bit more all over the place. But I start off very organized. I make notes for, in this case, for the lectures, week by week, I make my notes. But it's always when it comes to a quiz or like a midterm assessment, that's when I'm faced with the reality, oh no, my head feels empty. All my notes are worthless and ineffective because nothing's actually sticking in my brain. That's at least how it feels to my perception. And maybe I actually do remember more than what I give myself credit for. But that's my point is, well, it seems that learning has a lot to do with survival. Because when there's pressure involved, when there's some kind of real world consequence, that's when we get really sharp. That's when we get really committed with our education. And we go, oh boy, I better knuckle down. I've got to lock in. It's some kind of accountability, some kind of real world punishment or consequence for not following through. That's what kicks your brain into another gear of taking it seriously. But it's funny because if you stress about it, the stress can actually interfere with the learning itself. Because you can kind of just stress about learning, knowing that you've got a lot to learn, and then you're creating stress in between it. And that can actually interfere with the whole process and just create unnecessary pain for yourself. What's that expression? Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Is that what it is? Yeah, I think that's it. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. So this is what I've found with drum education. I've been playing drums for over 20 years. I've toured across the country. I live in Australia. I've played some of the biggest venues. I've played big festivals, blah, blah, blah. I've done all that stuff. I've studied music at university. I studied jazz drumming in my 20s. And I grew up never listening to jazz. I got into drumming because of heavy metal, hardcore, punk music. That's what got me into drumming. So I went to study drumming in my 20s, study jazz drumming, because I'd never listened to jazz, let alone played jazz drumming. So I thought, well, what better reason? That's like exactly why you go to study something, is because you don't know how to do that thing. So that's what I did. I'm just illustrating. I've done all the things. I've toured, performed big venues, festivals. I've even studied jazz performance as a drummer. And what I've found is that methods are good. Methods are great. It's always great to follow some kind of method, especially when you've just got no idea where to even start. I'd say it's sensible to follow a method book or a program or something like this. But the thing is, you don't want to get trapped by it. You don't want to get bound by it. You want to use the method to gain some ability, but you also want to eventually transcend that method. And because that's how I learned drumming. Like basically, when I first started drumming, I would just find tabs from Ultimate Guitar. Again, this is like 2005, or even like 2003. I would just find tabs for the songs I wanted to learn. It was like Black Sabbath, Iron Man, which is like 8-page tablature printed out. And it's like, of course, like the fills will be so subtly different from each other. That was a nightmare. But bands like Killswitch Engage, Lamb of God, that's where I really cut my teeth in drumming. And so I would just learn from tabs. There wasn't really a method I followed. I would find books, and I got a teacher, but even my teacher, after about a year, he left a message on the answering machine, which was a thing in those days, back in my day. And he basically said, I've taught you everything that I can teach you. And now you are free, grasshopper, whatever. And of course, when I was like 14 at the time, when you hear that, you feel like, well, I don't think you've taught me everything at all. I don't feel like I know anything, really. I feel like there's heaps for me to learn. But so my experience with drumming education was I'd have a teacher for a bit, and then I'd have a different teacher for a bit, and then I'd have a different teacher for a bit. Some students, for example, people that learn piano, it seems common that they'll have one teacher throughout like their childhood, adolescence, for like years. They become like a family friend or whatever, a mentor. But for drumming, I just found it was like, oh, I'm with you for like a year. Oh, now I'm with you for like a year. Now I'm with this guy. Now I'm with this guy. So it's just all over the place. Of course, I was so into what I was doing. I loved drumming so much, and I just had this thirst for knowledge that I would just download books at the time. I'd buy books from the local shop, or I'd sometimes go to drumming shops. Again, this is 2003, 2004, when there were like more drum shops around. And I would go to the bargain bins. I remember like one shop in Western Sydney, Parramatta area. And I remember just trawling through the bargain bins for drum books, and I would just take them home, not really knowing what they were, but just knowing this will come in handy in future. But so I did my best to follow methods, and I've done like different courses. I've done people's programs before with drumming, or you buy DVDs. DVDs are really cool. But then the YouTube thing happened, which is cool, but it's hard to filter out. It's like there's so much information now. I'm very fortunate I started drumming just as YouTube was happening, like coming out into the public. I think it was 2005 when that happened. And before that, it was just random websites like Drummer World, drumbum.com. There was only like a handful of websites, and then there were just forums, which I didn't really bother with forums because they were just a shit show, basically. But so I was fortunate that I grew up and learnt to drum before, like pre-YouTube, because the only information you could find had to be somewhat certified. Whereas now anyone, which is kind of cool, like now anybody can put information out there, which is kind of cool in a social communal aspect. But it also means there's no quality control with the information, and someone can just say their idea. I don't know, maybe it's good. But it was kind of nice when there was only a handful of experts and that's all there was. And you just had to kind of work with that. Because even me now, it's like information overload. There's like constantly new YouTube videos being uploaded and you can't keep up with it all. Which kind of brings me to how I approach education and drumming now, which is I just throw all that knowledge out the window. Now, when I talk about this, I'm probably going to look back on this or listen back to this and maybe rethink some of the ideas that I'm about to say, but I'm just going to have a go saying them anyway. But basically, the way I drum now, I just sit down and play, and I don't think about anything that I've learned. Now, I'm sure those things that I've learned are ingrained in my DNA by this point, but it'd be maybe like a builder. Once you do it for like 20 years, you just have your ways of doing things that regardless if like the newest person comes out and says, hey, I've got this new technique, you just have this way of knowing what truly does work based on decades of experience, observation, trial and error. You've just got your way, or maybe like a chef, any kind of artisan. You just develop your way, whether you realize it or not, whether it's conscious to you or not. Even if you have like a taste in movies or music, you just know what you like, even if you're not conscious of what that is. So now when I drum, I am very much like a caveman. I've come full circle. I've gone through all this whole educational process, and now I just throw it all out, more or less. And I've come back to this caveman approach where I just use brawn. I just literally have sticks and I whack the drums and that's it. Yep, see you later. And then I get up and go away. Now, it's also like economical because I'm studying a different degree. I'm transforming my life path, blah, blah, blah. I'm following other pursuits. I don't have that passion and drive to sit down and practice the way I used to practice. Sometimes I get motivated to like practice some new technique, but it's not really relevant to me paying my bills anymore. Now that I'm in my 30s, I'm turning 35. And you could say, oh, well, that's not why you do music. But like, obviously people prioritize the things that are going to pay their bills and put the food on the table. And for me, like practicing some like niche technique just isn't cutting it for me. And I guess the whole point of this video, what I'm getting at is I'm not even convinced that learning happens the way that we think it happens. That's what I've been realizing with my studies. It's like you need to simulate those situations where you are thrown into the deep end. You're thrown into the fire and you just have to fight. You're just thrown into the war zone and you just got to shoot. You could sit back and study how guns are built and the correct trajectory and what to do in this weather condition and la la la. You can get all the theory, but eventually you just need to be thrown into the firing range, the firing line. You just need to be thrown in and just shoot for your life and survive, and just do that over and over and over and over and over and over. And eventually you will become adept. And then you can take those experiences and combine them with theory and research, but then it's backed by actual real world experiences. So that's a massive challenge that I face teaching drumming, is that I personally feel like I've learnt by being thrown into the deep end and just told, swim, go, go, swim, fight, fight. That's how I've learned and that's how I've developed. So it can be tricky as a teacher, a drum teacher, giving students this crafted package of information, neat little package. Here's your little module, just bite size. And then next week we'll do this little module, which is great. It's all well and good, but it's just not even how I learnt. Personally, for me, like life and reality and learning is chaos. It's like, boom, now we're doing this, boom, boom, boom. So anyway, they're like challenges that I experience teaching drumming, but it also helps me being aware of this and talking this through, because that's what I do when I sit at the drums. Sometimes I'll get questions about the way that I drum, but for me, it's like, well, it's interesting. I like being asked questions because then it helps me remember, like, oh yeah, there was a phase in my life, like for years, where I was practicing this one thing, or I was practicing this like bunch of things, and I'd go to the practice room for like hours. But again, I come back to like what actually works and what are you doing that's just wasting your time. Like you could spend 8 hours practicing something. And look, you're probably going to be better off for it just for spending 8 hours doing one thing, like spending 8 hours on your drumming. You'll be better off for it in ways you probably weren't even expecting or planning for. But is it really going to help do what you need to do as a drummer? And then it raises questions, well, what do you need to do as a drummer? And that's where we go, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Like, what is it to be a drummer? What is drumming? This is exactly what I'm talking about. And again, especially with social media, it creates this conditioning of what drumming is and what drumming should be. And I think it's great to have people out there like role models and drumming idols that we look to as examples of what drumming can be. But it's also very easy to get limited through seeing what's on social media, and we go, oh, drumming has to be this specific thing, and you've got to sound like this, you got to look like this, you got to blah blah, and you got to blue blue. And that's where I come back to this approach where I'm just kind of throwing all of that out, and I'm just now playing the way that I just play. And it's not even necessarily the way I want to play. It is on a deep level, but it's just the way that I play. When I sit at the drums, I just play, and that's what comes out. Just like if you sit with a piece of paper and a pencil and you just draw, maybe you draw squiggles. Maybe for me, sometimes I'll draw like patterns. I'll do like circles, make like shapes with lots of circles, or like diamonds, and you just make random patterns. Or maybe you'll draw like a tree, or maybe you'll draw like a house and a person. Maybe you'll draw a face. Maybe you'll draw a setting, like a horizon with an ocean or a mountain. So that's where I'm at with drumming. And I really want to break, well, I don't really care what happens. I'm not trying to break. Just in my own world, I am breaking this perception that drumming has to be a certain way, because it just doesn't jive with me. If I try to make drumming a certain way, if I frame drumming as a specific way, I guarantee a part of me will want to break that frame. That's what it's about to me. the way I drum is it's like destruction. It's chaos and it's destruction, but it's order. It's order, but I'm breaking the paradigms. But I don't mean it like, like some genius Leonardo da Vinci, I'm breaking the paradigm, Copernican revolution. I just mean it like, I don't really care what your expectations are for drumming. This is the way that I want to play, and that's just it. If you want me to play a different way, you got to ask someone else to get them to play the way that you want them to play, because I'm getting old, getting older, and I can't just bend to your expectations. This is just the way that I drum, take it or leave it, which brings me back to why I'm studying something else, so that I don't have to be this drummer, this freelance drummer that's got to play all these gigs that he doesn't want to play and hates his life, can barely pay his bills, all that stuff. I'd rather just have something separate that brings me means so that I can pay all my bills and maybe even buy a new drum kit, so that I can just drum the way that I want to drum. However that plays itself out, every day is a new day. And that's largely why I do my improvisation videos, is because every day, every moment is a new moment, created fresh, new. So that's why I've shaped my channel to be based around daily improvisation, so that I can reinvent myself anew each day, each moment. Because it's as soon as I create a paradigm, again, coming back to like drum methods, I can come up with a method, but I guarantee I'm going to reach a point and go, oh, that's bullshit. No, that's bullshit, and I'm doing it this way. Today I'm doing it that way. So it's good to have like a framework, like a method as a framework, but just don't forget to break the frame, okay? That's all I'm really saying. So maybe I'll wrap it up there. I've been talking for like 25 minutes. But if you found any of this interesting, please let me know. Whatever platform you're on, you could send me an email, jamalsalemdrums@gmail.com. This is on YouTube. Leave a comment. If you find this on social media, just leave me a comment, send me a message, and just let me know what you thought, or at least if you have any questions, because I can address these questions in these episodes. It actually gives me something to talk about that's relevant. You might actually strike on something that I've wanted to talk about, but I've forgotten, or I've never been asked the question in that way, or maybe it's a question I've never been asked. So just let me know your thoughts on this. But yeah, I hope that gives a new perspective on drumming. For me, like, again, the way I approach drumming, this is just my approach, and what I say today, I may break it tomorrow. However, there are some tried and tested things that I do that I've learned from drumming. The amount of gigs I've done, I can't even tell you. The amount of students I've taught, can't even begin to express to you the enormity and the breadth of it all. So let me know your thoughts. Like this video, leave me a review if you're listening on Spotify, wherever you're listening. Let me know your thoughts, give me some feedback, and I wish you all the best on your journey. Peace and love.